clubpod.co, clubpod.co, clubpod.co. Okay.
Hi folks, this is another of these clubpod.co little talks, whatever you want to call them. Now, I'm doing this walking the dog, so there'll be a lot of background noise. I'm hoping it picks up the birds in the woods. I've been having to start and stop because it's a Sunday I'm doing this on, and there's lots of people walking around. So every time I started, I've had to stop. So this is not gone as planned, but that's life. A lot of these things I'm going to show in a more real way, real world examples, rather than the polished perfection I could be putting out. I could do this at home, make it sound perfect, no background noise, cut everything out, but I think it's easier if you get a more pure sound. Anyway, this one is, before we start doing anything, it's called the beginning. I don't know what you want to call it, but before you start a podcast, you've got to consider it's like starting a business. And that's what a podcast, everything's basically like a business. What you want to do is you research, a lot of research. I'd spend a year at least doing it personally, because there's so much you've got to learn from. Well, first of all, listen to radio shows, TV shows, podcasts, and I don't mean just recent ones. Go back as far as you can. Listen to radio shows from the 1940s, because you can see them, listen to them online. Listen to how they're produced, the sounds. Work out how far people are from the mics, the position of the mics, everything. There's a lot there to take in. One of the disadvantages of doing a podcast is people start off doing it on their own. They're not producers or anything. And because of that, what they could be producing can sound quite dull and boring, because in a radio studio, you'll have somebody who'll know exactly how long an interview will go on. I mean, they'll have, unlike a podcast, which you can hear podcasts dull as anything going on hours. In a radio show, they may interview somebody for no more than 3 minutes, bump straight onto the next, and get everything in that 3 minutes. And that can be the difference between a success and failure in podcasts, in the fact that you're making something so dreadful. You can have all the best gear in the world. It's a bit like there was an advert in, I think it was the 80s in the UK, where a famous photographer was walking around with a basic camera. They were selling this camera, which was an automatic, and he was showing that he could make better pictures than somebody who's got no talent but with thousands of pounds worth of gear. And I see this a lot. I've seen people with the best gear in podcasts, and they'll spend thousands on a mic, totally over the top, for something that is going to be put into an MP3 format, and you won't realistically hear any difference at all. But they'll be smug and they'll go, oh, well, I've got all the gear, and they'll feel really important, and the ego gets in the way. And the trouble with that is the shows end up really dreadful, and no one listens, and they sit there, and of course it's everyone else's fault why they've not got any viewers, and then they'll panic and spend a fortune trying to advertise it, and yeah, that'll get viewers, but they'll wear off because they'll listen and not bother. So do your research over and over. Now, why I say this is because the truth is a lot of people aren't cut out for podcasting. They just don't have the time. I mean, I don't. I'm going to put my hands up here. I know I don't have the voice or personality or anything. I'm just doing this because I've learnt stuff over the years. So I'm just passing it on rather than to entertain. This isn't me entertaining you guys. This is literally me just trying to pass some of my thoughts on. Now, you have to be honest with yourself. A lot of people I hear they've got a big ego, and they think that they're going to be super wonderful and whatnot. They've got the greatest idea, and they suddenly find they've got no listeners. And you've got to remember that there's thousands of these damn podcasts, thousands upon thousands. And a lot of people quit after a few times anyway. They'll do a few shows, get bored, and find it's not for them. They'll probably run out of ideas. Many just repeat what others are doing. For instance, there seems to be this big doodles where everyone's just interviewing each other, which, quite honestly, it's boring. You're not an interviewer in most cases. There's very few people. If you're a good interviewer, you'll be making millions on TV. You know, there's only so many people who've got the talent, such as Oprah Whitney and a few, and yes, they make it sound natural, and that's the thing. They make these things. The good people, the ones with talent, will make it sound like they're putting no effort in, because it comes natural to them. And you'll think, oh, that's easy. And it's only when you start doing it you'll realise, oh Christ, it's not that easy. Now, even comedians I've heard, really funny comedians, have tried podcasting and failed because they don't have a producer behind them editing it and whatnot. Well, when they've done a radio show, they've got the full team behind them, maybe even script writers and etc. And it applies to YouTube as well. I've seen professionals go on YouTube and fail because they're doing it on their own. They don't have the skills to. They're presenters, but they don't have the skills to do everything else. Film, know how to set things up, and you can see. While others, you'll be surprised, can come along and they'll do it and they'll be successful because they've got the skills. But this is also another thing you need to learn: all the technology, sound engineering, which I'll go into later. But without that, understanding how to edit, cut, there's a ton of things in sound. I mean, in reality, you could do degrees in it and become a doctor in sound engineering. You still will only know a bit. But this is what radio studios hire people on. They hire the best and they have done. So over the years, radio shows will have had really talented people. So they've got the talents of a photographer. They know everything. They know how to tweak everything to get perfection. And not just perfection, to make things sound as they want. And these things are things that you need to learn before you start, because I guarantee it, you go out and do this, you'll flop straight away. By the way, I'm just walking alongside the road at the moment over a wet muddy field, so you probably hear my feet. It'll be interesting to play this back, how sensitive this mic is. I'm only using cheap gear at the moment because it's a real world example. I'm doing everything on an iPad because the dogs chew through the power cord and the laptop, and I think the connection to the laptop's gone a bit funny as well. So I've got a power bank coming today, but I'm not sure it'll work, so it might be a new laptop. But until then, I'm going to be editing things on an iPad, which again will be interesting. We can learn from that how easy it is. And I'm going to go through the technology later, why I've got an iPad, because a lot of people I won't go into it yet because I think that's another discussion. But yeah, before we start, look at listening to everything. Go on YouTube, listen to all the sound editing, vids, everything you can. Learn as much as you can. Because I guarantee, if you haven't done none of this research, none of this homework, it's a bit like I was chatting to a baker years ago. And because he was a baker, he thought he could set up a business as a baker because he could make the best cakes. Trouble is, he had no idea how to run a business, only to bake, and it flopped. And this is one of the troubles. You may think you've got the skills in one area, but you need a lot of skills, unless you're doing it in a team. If you've got a few people helping you, it makes life easier. The big podcasts, I presume, have got a team behind them. They're probably set up like a radio station. Even though you might think it's a one-man band, a lot of these things tend not to be. They give the impression it's a one-man band when there's quite a few people working on it. So that's the first bit. The second bit is you've got to have an idea about your podcast. Is it something people want to listen to? The other day I was listening to somebody talking about, they were doing one on suicide and wondering why nobody was listening. And the guy said, honestly, it's not that, it's something people don't want to listen to. But he got in his head that it was going to be this big expert. And he said, look, if you go have 5 or 6 people listen and it helps them, and that's all you want to chat to, then go along with it. But don't expect millions of views. Now, the other side of things is think of who's going to listen to it. A lot of people may be listening on the way to work. So, if you do something depressing, it's probably less likely people will listen than say something a bit uplifting and cheerful. So I'll be saying a lot. I can't be bothered editing that out. Now, things like YouTube, people may relax and watch on the night when they get home. So they might not be listening to podcasts. I'd say that if my aim, if I was looking at doing one, would be considering people who are driving or going to work on the bus or train or even cycling or walking, because that's when I think people are more likely to listen to podcasts. And by the way, one of the interesting things about the word podcast today is we're moving away, although it was originally set up because of the little iPods, a lot of people now are listening more and more on their phones because of the earpods. I do. I hated headphones. I used to just damage them all the time. I used to just buy cheap pound ones because I knew I'd just stand on them and they were a pain to plug in. But I find the earpod things, I know they have cheap ones. I mean, I think they cost me 20 quid. They're quite handy to listen to. So I listen to a lot of things as I'm walking the dogs. So I'm just bending down, putting the leads on. Oh, it's a bit cold as well, so my nose is a bit runny. I'll have to end it soon because I'll be going near a row, so I'm just bending down. So think about, do you a bit of research. You've got to remember there's thousands, if not millions, of podcasts out there. And quite honestly, most are boring. So you have to be honest here. A lot of people have a lot of ego and think that they're the greatest thing ever, and I've heard them. They're rubbish at podcasting and they get no views at all. The other thing you to do is never surround yourself. I've heard people say always surround yourself with positive people. Sod that. You don't want to be around people who tell you you're great all the time. I've seen that. They're not good people, they're garbage. People who tell you you're good are quite sinister because they're not interested in helping you at all. They just want to sound good themselves by saying, oh, you're good. It's a bit like people who say to fat people, oh, you're healthy and good and everything's going to be great. In reality, there won't be. I remember someone saying that to somebody fat, and then a year later she died. She was overweight and she was only in the 20s. But because everyone would say, oh yeah, marvellous, it's great, carry on, they didn't give a damn about her. And I'm sorry, but that's the reality. People avoid them people. You want people to tell you things suck, because then you can improve. Never get so egotistical that you can't take people comments. People telling you, they'll tell you. I remember years ago, somebody posted a website and it didn't work. And I saw on this forum, everyone was posting how marvellous it was. They didn't even bother looking. They would just want to sound good and great and say, oh, you're marvellous and all this. The site didn't actually load. And I had to point it out. And instead of thanking me, the guy was so big egotistical. He went ballistic and started calling me every name under the sun for daring to say his pet project didn't work. I mean, it flopped. He spent a fortune on it. It flopped because It was so big-headed that I couldn't even see that the sight was faulty. But this is a danger. Lose any ego. And I usually can tell when people have got an ego. They'll say I'm the CEO and founder of this, that and the other of something that is so small. It's a hobby. I mean, I do things as a hobby. I mean, I do another podcast as a hobby. And yet I get far more views than most people who bang on how they're the CEO and they'll tell you how marvellous they are and they're the founder of this, that and the other and how helpful and interested people are in it. And yet they'll tell you the numbers and it's laughable. I remember one person telling me, well, she said on the radio that she got X numbers of views in total over 5 years and I'd actually got more than that on a single post. And again, I'm just doing this for a bit of a giggle. I don't care about making money or anything from it, it's just a bit of fun. But you've got to drop the ego. Ego will kill it. Do it fun. That's, after all, podcasts are supposed to be entertaining. Some aren't. I mean, this isn't. This is more of a sort of teaching or something. Helpful views. Now again, I'm walking along a busy road, so I don't know how this will sound. So, and my nose is starting to run, so that doesn't sound good either because I've got the sniffles. The one I'll do next, so I'm coming to the end. I might cover this again. The one I'm going to do later on my way home, I'll be doing it at night. And I find that when you record at night in the woods, it sounds a bit different to during the day. It's quite eerie sound. But I'll see, it might be just my imagination. Oh, so if you want to, I'm trying to, like I say, I'm doing all this free. I'm not interested in I'm not one of these jerks that go, oh, pay me $100 to promote your site or whatever. Because quite honestly, a lot of them, they'll do it, but you won't get much in your way of your money back. A lot of people think they'll get 1 million views, and often you might find you've only got 2 or 3 extra views. It's not worth it, in my view. Not something you can do yourself. And that's why I'm doing this free. This is, so, I mean, I'm quite happy to help people out. So if you've got questions or anything, just get in touch. The site I've set up is clubpod.co. That's .co at the end. That's clubpod.co. Again, everything's free, I'm not charging. If you want me to do something and cover something, I'll do it. But I've got a few ideas, and like I said, it's rough and ready. Nothing in here it's as unprofessional as you can get. Most of the time I won't be doing it at home. I'll be walking around, chatting. So it might sound terrible to listen to. The gear I'm using is only cheap. I'll go through the gear later. I've got some pro gear, but to be honest, I found the cheap stuff's easier. So like I said, if you haven't started a podcast, or even if you are, do your research, because the amount of people that they go on and they just have no idea. They think they can interview people. Interviewing people's a skill. If you want to interview people, well, I mean, every podcast on the Sun seems to have done it. Very uninteresting for me. I mean, you might get a few listeners and it might I might be wrong on this, but for me, listening to interviews is dull as dishwater. Listening to some twit go, I can make you rich, or be positive, or any of this garbage. So it is, you're not going to get anywhere, you know. I don't want to burst your bubble, but bouncing around going, oh, this man tricks are going, I'm going to be rich tomorrow, I'm a great person, blah blah. I've heard people do it. They never succeed. They're usually the ones that don't. I remember doing a sales job when someone were doing that. It was hysterical. They never got, I know he hadn't done anything. He was asking me for a job now. He was older than me. I mean, I used to just turn up and be as miserable as him, but I could just do it. I could get the sales in. So I just put myself in the right mind frame. But he convinced himself he was going to be a and this is something, by the way, if you want to be a multi-millionaire, well, actually it's not that difficult, I don't think. First, they'll do it for the right reasons. A lot of people want to be rich because they want people to say yes sir, yes sure they want, and it's a bit pathetic. I mean, I couldn't care less. I mean, I'd never ask people to call me sir. Whenever I just called me by first name. I hate all that rubbers. But I mean, that's something else. Anyway, that's the end. Like I said, clubpod.co, and I'll do a few of these. And like I said, there might be some use to some. There might be as dull to others. Alright then, folks. Ciao.
Clubpod.co, clubpod.co, clubpod.co.